Good morning, hires. How are you? I hope you're doing okay. Please let me know how you're getting on, and please let me know if I'm giving you too much or if you're not managing to get through everything. Please let me know because I'm not getting much feedback, so I don't know if what I'm giving you is too much in this time or how you're managing all your courses. Also, I'm obviously putting deadlines as a kind of rough guide, but please don't panic if you can't get the deadline and then don't think when the deadline's done you can't do it. That's not the case at all. I kind of need to put a deadline down. I know that kind of gives you a reminder. It's good for me to kind of have an idea, but please don't worry if you can't make it. And I know some of you are working a little bit beyond, which is absolutely okay. We all have different demands on our time right now in different circumstances. So please don't worry about that. Give me an email or just drop it in a couple of days later. As long as it's there, that's the most important thing. So that said, there are a couple of you who still haven't handed in all of the work so far. So please, if you can, prioritise, go back and update what you've not done so far before you move on. Because obviously that's how I see you engaging, how I see you engaging with the course and how I kind of assess how you're getting on. So they are valuable, so please try that as best you can. Well done on your analysis plus points. I know they are very challenging. I'm purposely doing that. Please don't panic if you're going, oh, I don't get it. But well done for giving it an attempt. Most of you have done really well and given it a wee shot. Some of you have done really exceedingly well, so congratulations. Some of you obviously are still a little bit struggling, and that's absolutely okay. What I would really remind you to do is to really link back to the question. That's the most important thing, and that is how you'll lose marks. Everyone will lose marks on that come to prelim, honestly. Linking back to the question, I can't stop saying that, and I won't stop saying it the whole year. Link back to the question, link back to the question. So for example, I'm trying to think of one of them. Someone mentioned it was about the fact that, the lower clergy would be not happy with their conditions and therefore would be angry. Now, whilst that might be true, that's not actually analysis because one, there's no link back to the question. There's no use of the word because, and it's not actually answering the question. So anger doesn't mean a threat to the on-short regime. I can be angry about many things about the government right now. It doesn't make me a threat. So how am I a threat? How does that thing be a threat to on-short regime? And that's what the question is asking you to do. So how is the role of the clergy a threat? Well, the key way probably is the idea that it has proximity to the people. So the idea that the clergy has access to the mass population, therefore it could potentially poison the minds of the people against the on-short regime and potentially bring it down. So again, I've linked it right back to the question. And my counter argument for that is something again like, however, whilst this may be the case, the threat is actually limited because most of the clergy had sworn an oath of obedience and therefore would not do anything to risk the position of the church or to go against the king, who was ultimately respected and ultimately held the kind of religious values that they had to support. So they would not therefore turn against them. Okay, or therefore not be a threat. So it's really important you link back to the question really clearly. The same with the nobility of the sword and the robe. You can't just say the nobility of the robe, your sword was unhappy with the nobility of the robe because they had positions of power without actually having royal blood. That's true, but that's a fact of knowledge. You've not given me any analysis, you've not used the word because, and you haven't told me why it's a threat to the on-short regime. So you could talk about something, the idea that the dispute between the nobility of the robe and the nobility of the sword potential is a threat to the on-short regime because that dispute could fuel out into society and potentially could threaten to bring down the security of the regime or the structure of the regime. Something like that. I mean, that's quite weak. Potentially also you could say the nobility had access to most of the money making schemes across France, so therefore the nobility weren't happy and they turned against the on-short regime. They could potentially destabilise all the economy of France and therefore bring it down. As you're thinking about how does the on-short regime, what is a threat to the on-short regime? Ideas would be threats, physical money making things would be threats. That's what you're thinking about. I mean, hatred of the king because it could lead into rebellion. These are threats. What is a threat to on-short regime? That's what you need to think and link it in together. So well done on your attempt so far and keep on going. This week we're going to be looking at the third estate, and the third estate are the bottom of the on-short regime. You already know that, and they're made up of the bourgeoisie, the peasants and the urban workers. Now in the essay, potentially the third estate is just one factor, but you have to know each single bit of the third estate. So obviously we're going to do 3 lessons separately. I was intending to do all 3 lessons this week, but that might be a little bit too much for you. Please let me know. I'll see how the first 2 go. If not, I'll delay the third one till the beginning of next week. I might keep the analysis plus points in this one so that you can just copy it from the PowerPoint or think about it and put it into your jotters. I'll usually ask you, if I have given you the analysis plus, to add more of your own Because again, it's better again for you if when you're writing an essay you're thinking of your own, or you've already thought of your own, because you're more likely to be organic in your thinking and in your writing. Whereas if you've just copied mine, what will happen, and particularly in an exam situation, is that you just think you have a mind blank because you've actually not thought about the issues, and therefore you won't know what to write. Okay, so really think about your own analysis points, although at the bottom of these PowerPoints I will keep them in this week to be nice to you. But again, please catch up with the work that's been put up there so far already. So the first one is the grievances of the peasantry, and I'll put that up as a PowerPoint. It talks about the three kind of different branches, and it says at the bottom, viewed as the wealth creators. It's a really good phrase to use. The third estate were the wealth creators of France, because the third estate were the group who were producing all the money and all the wealth, all the food, everything, doing all the dirty work, if you will, whereas the first and second estates aren't doing that. Yes, the first estate is, given kind of religious powers, and yes, the second estate is providing some sort of security and money and palaces and all the rest of it, but the third estate is what is keeping the beating heart of France alive. Hence why, when you get to analysis, you could argue the third estate is the biggest threat, because the third estate is most of the population. So again, numbers, and some of you have mentioned that already, but they're more numerous, whereas the clergy and the nobility are very small in numbers, so it could easily be overthrown. And hint, hint, when we get to the revolution, the third estate play a really, really important part. So they are important, very important. I've got a picture of bread, because I talk about how bread is a staple diet, and anything goes wrong with bread, then everyone can go in absolute crisis. We're talking about a population, I know a couple of you have written this already, a population who live basically hand to mouth on a day-to-day basis. Something we don't understand that much anymore, because we live in this consumerist kind of capitalist society. That was not the case back then, and a lot of people just survive on the harvest. And again, it's like many places today, unfortunately still in the world, live like that if the harvest is poor, they can risk starvation or risk very low calorie intake in a day. And with very low calorie intake in a day, you know how much that can affect everything else. It can affect the rest of society. So again, really, really think about that, being a different, you put your head into the kind of 18th century society rather than today's. So it talks about how bread, and it talks about the peasants at the bottom kind of living in really bad conditions. You'll remember to do with Russia, and it's kind of similar idea we're getting to do here about their life. Talks about their grievances, about their diet, and a kind of key points of knowledge about them, just for you to learn about them. And again, that reiterates or repeats a lot to do with Russia. And it's got a couple of facts about France and why the peasants in France had particular grievances, what their grievances are. You can imagine the fact that they are, they're bearing the burden of taxation, so they're working the hardest, but most of their money is given up in tax. They're getting squeezed, whereas obviously the people at the top who are making the most money are not paying any tax at all. It's a complete different society that we live in today. The idea that not only did they have to pay tax, they had to pay their church tax, their normal tax, and then they had to do, they also had to pay, remember, tax wasn't just money, remember, so tax is also in terms of produce. So if they're producing, 10 gallons of whatever, or 10 buckets of grain, they had to pay 5 of those in tax. So half, up to 45% of their produce is going in tax. It's not just money, you're thinking in chickens and grain and whatever they're farming, whatever they're able to get their hands on, that goes away in tax, wine, whatever. They're also therefore afterwards asked to do things like military service, and that's called the corvée. There's another tax. It's not a tax in terms of payment, but it's a tax in terms of, it's a duty. We call them kind of dues. Or obligations, responsibilities that again the first and second estates are totally exempt from, and the third estate are not, and they're not happy about that at all. And that's all the third estate have to do that. So it might be the peasants maybe in a certain area are fine with that because it gives them something to do if they're not farmers. But again, think about the bourgeoisie, the urban workers who are working on factories, etc., but may have to do these same responsibilities, including building roads, etc. Okay, they also then have to pay taxes to actually use the wine press and other things owned by the nobility, so they're just getting taxed and squeezed dry at every single opportunity, to be honest, and that's not very good. Then you have a look at your booklet, read through the information there, and then it asks you to do your A and A+, and the A that I've got in the PowerPoint, so the fact that they had the sheer numbers that could potentially allow them to pose a real threat and bring the whole system down. However, thinking about the peasants aren't very educated, and they might not be able to have the political skill to organise a proper rebellion. Additionally, the idea that they lived hand to mouth on a day-to-day basis, so they're very unlikely to want to risk their position or risk death, or even they might not even have the strength, physical strength, to be able to actually rebel against a more powerful kind of structure in the non-regime. Okay, so that is all about the peasants. Then after that, we'll go on to the bourgeoisie. I'll just talk through them really quickly if my video still manages to hold up. I've got a little note there for you to talk about. Again, copy it down into your jotters. Who are the bourgeoisie? They are kind of the intellectuals, they're still commoners on the third estate, but they are the rich commoners. They're like a middle class, to be honest, and they do jobs usually with their brain rather than with their hands, not manual labour like the peasants or the urban workers, but they're doing intellectual jobs. So merchants, traders, lawyers, teachers often, so civil servants, so they are quite well respected, and a lot of our key players later on in the revolution come from this group, the bourgeoisie. Quite a threat, to be honest. Think of Robespierre. He comes up later on, for example, and he was a lawyer, so a lot of key figures later on come from this area of the third estate, or this section of the third estate. Again, they aren't a huge part of society, not as numerous as the peasants, but they are still creating the wealth, and they're very, very aware of ideas, and that's what makes the bourgeoisie quite a threat, because they're quite educated. They're involved in ideas. I mean, think about it. Even today, people who go to university usually get like educated in terms of talking about philosophy and theology and rights and all this sort of thing, and they're encouraged in debate, etc. So back then, the idea to go to university or to be trained in that sort of environment was very, very based on philosophy and theology and all these big deep questions. So they were very savvy and kind of challenged the unfairness of the L'Enchaîné regime over time and become very, very aware of it. A lot of them also resent the idea they can't get into the nobility, and some of them do. Some of those ones are the ones who buy their way into the nobility, to be honest. Others aren't able to. Okay, now why are they a threat? I've already mentioned it. Their intelligence can make them a threat because they are really aware and acutely aware of the injustice of the L'Enchaîné regime in their position, and they're also aware of what's going on. They can read, remember, it's really important. They can read things that come out, they can read pamphlets, they can read kind of maybe religiously or politically not allowed items at the time, and really start to digest and spread those ideas, which does happen, by the way. Spoiler alert. However, you could argue that they are a minority, and again, they might not want to risk their position in society, or maybe risk their position in getting into the nobility that could maybe potentially limit their threat to the L'Enchaîné regime. Okay, so that is the bourgeoisie. I'll mention the urban workers really quickly. As I say, I don't know if I'll actually talk about these or give you this lesson this week. But basically, again, who the urban workers, similar again to Russia, to be honest. They're the people who are working in centres, so in factories. And again, think about it, that's quite a threat because they're actually in the city centres or in the big populous centres. They're not despairs that the peasants are. They actually are in the centres, and in the centres they can merge with other people and other groups of people, like the bourgeoisie, for example. So although they're maybe not educated and they're working with their hands, they do have access to more information throughout the factory and more people than the peasants do that are very, very far removed from usual society. Their jobs aren't very secure, they don't live in very good conditions, and their wages do fall. In this period, just before the revolution, we have a time of change that the population is growing. That has a big impact on the peasants because their land gets smaller because there's more land to give out and to work on. And it also means that conditions in the factories get worse, the factories that have popped out, as well as the wages start to go down. Okay, if you watched Les Mis, you may have an idea. However, remember that Les Mis is set in the revolution after this one. It's not a revolution, it's actually after 1815, I think. We're talking about the 17 kind of 80s right now, before issue 2. Okay. Urban workers, talks a little bit about the urban workers there, and then it really mentions the sans-culottes. They become really, really important in the revolution again, spoiler. And they're called the sans-culottes because they're a bit rebellious and they don't necessarily wear the breeches that the nobility would wear. Now they're not nobility, but it's a kind of expected wear or for dress for you to wear. They don't wear it, and they kind of show themselves to be different by wearing this sans-culotte, popular today in fashion. And they aren't really happy because obviously they are not very well treated, their conditions are quite poor in the factory, etc., and they again get a wee bit fed up. They're quite reactionary, to be honest, and become very, very, very important, and they become quite radicalised, to be honest, and quite militant as we move into the revolution. Okay. What grievances did they have? Understand their position in society, they couldn't escape poverty, and the problem was getting bread. Again, just like the peasants, although the peasants lived in the countryside, they could actually get food or bread, or they could maybe get items from round about them in the countryside, whereas the urban workers are in the city centres. So the problem with city centres is that the bread and the food had to come in from the outside. So again, if that didn't happen effectively, they would be very, very unhappy. They were literally at the whim of the food getting delivered effectively. It wasn't easy just to pop out and get some apples off an apple tree or a chicken to eat. or a river to fish. So really think about that in terms of urban workers. They really were not happy if they couldn't get the bread either. They couldn't survive. Okay. Some activities for you to do in this PowerPoint, and again, the analysis is just the idea that they were frustrated that they couldn't improve their lot, to be honest, and they were becoming increasingly revolutionary because they were so unhappy with the unfairness of the Enshrinement regime at the time, the fact that their conditions were so poor and they had no way, remember, they had no way to improve their situation. This is way before the idea of trade unions and of workers' rights. You know, you just were in the factory and you just shut up and did it, as you see in Les Mis when she gets fired at the very beginning. So they had no rights, and again, that's a good point. You know, they were unhappy, they were living there trying to make their day-to-day way to survive in a day, trying to make enough money to get through each day at a time. They had no rights, etc. So after a while they might get fed up of that and maybe want more of a say in a government or a society that's fairer. So it might be a threat. However, you could argue that they were quite small in number in comparison to the peasants, for example, and therefore might not have been that much of an efficient opposition to the Enshrinement regime, and therefore maybe not likely to bring it down. Okay, so I've whizzed through the third essay. Hopefully that's helpful. I'll post this video for Tuesday morning, and I really hope you've had a lovely long weekend. Please get in touch if you've got any problems, and please try your best to catch up and get activities done as you can, and please let me know if that's not the case or I'm giving you far too much. Okay, I'd really appreciate to know. Hope you're doing well. Please stay safe and keep on enjoying your learning. Okay, see you soon. Bye.